Hello, hello.
Hey, Steve. Okay, what's up?
Nothing much. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Just, I'm not doing great. That's a lie, actually. I'm living through a political nightmare right now, the United States. So,
I hope it's emotionally not too hard on you.
you know, it it is what it is.
Hmm.
How are you feeling?
I'm okay. I mean, I'm not like I don't emotionally react to political events. I usually get over things pretty easily, so my life is good. I'm happy.
Do you do you ever feel alone on the internet?
Alone on the internet? Why? Because I'm the only person who thinks like I do.
I guess
Uh,
I'm sure you've seen it, right? When we chat, there's usually when we're chatting, it's over things we disagree with, and my audience gets mad at you, and every other audience
mhm.
gets mad at you. But it's pretty rare to find somebody who, like, legitimately in good faith has criticisms for both sides. And usually, just a few criticisms of one side is enough to have you never be like treated as a human being by that side. So you can very quickly find yourself isolated. So I'm just curious. You notice it, like there are very few people on the internet. Like, do you know anybody else that legitimately fights with both sides besides me, of course?
Legitimately, I mean, there are people who will get it from both sides. Like, my friend Claire Lamont at Colette, she was, being attacked by Elon Musk this morning, and the left hated her because she was anti-woke. So she goes against both Musk slash Trump and the woke. I think I trigger people though. I mean, I'm trying to think of like what publication or what podcast I can appear on and not have like a large portion of the audience be mad. And there's not many, if any, places. Um, but it's okay. I was a kind of antisocial child. I didn't really have friends. I was kind of made fun of and sort of weird. So I developed a pretty thick skin. And yeah, taking that with me into adulthood. And yeah, I have a family and a good personal life. So none of the internet stuff bothers me. It makes me feel virtuous. It makes me feel like it's me against everyone else, right? It's like you can try to be like a normal person, and like for some people that works. And then if you can't be normal, you could kind of be extraordinary and be just saying what I think. And as long as I, have confidence in what I'm saying, and if people get mad at that, makes me feel good.
Okay, if you say so, sure. Um, what were we fighting over? Your Zelensky tweets. Can I
Yeah.
can I give you okay, I want to start with a broad overview of how I view the United States, okay? I'm going to ramble for like a minute and a half, okay? And then you can come in, all right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
Real quick, can I ask you what your background is in terms of like family, where they come from, where'd you come from? Have you been in the US your whole life or anything, or
My,
you, as
my
much as you're
dad is
comfortable with, yeah?
yeah, I was born here, but my dad is a Palestinian Christian and my mom is Jordanian.
Oh, geez. Okay.
The
When you
United
say
States.
Palestinian Christian, do you know where he was living? And was he there prior to, or God?
Jerusalem.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. All right. When you say your mom was Jordanian, is she Palestinian as well, or was she there before?
No, she's a Jordanian.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. When I was growing up, my parents were both in the Air Force. My mom is Cuban, so super pro America, very, fuck all communism and socialism. And I grew up in a very big, like, I'd say Red Scare household. Like, they always talked about the Chinese Communist Party. I think my mom always called Russia Soviet Russia. She never called it Russia. And one thing that I grew up with was kind of the strong idea that even if America's not perfect, and especially through the Cold War, there are a lot of questionable entanglements we got into in South America. After the Cold War, like the second Gulf War, Iraq and Afghanistan, or at least Iraq, was probably not very defensible. A lot of mistakes made there. But for the most part, America stands for something worldwide, and ideally is seen as some kind of guiding beacon for, like, well, say broadly, democracy and freedom. Even though we're not perfect, of course, but preferable to the alternatives like Russia or China easily. When I look at the Ukraine-Russia conflict, there's a couple things that come up. One is that Europe has enjoyed, I would say, a good deal of stability in the world that followed both World War II and then followed the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I think a lot of that has had to do with America as being kind of this guiding leader of, hey, we're going to do all the military shit. We're going to ensure, freedom of trade routes and integrity, territorial integrity and all that. So you guys aren't building armies and fighting each other constantly, because that's what Europe likes to do, or liked to do. And the United States has enjoyed a great deal of economic and diplomatic benefit, like soft power, as a result of that. When I look at the Russian invasion into Ukraine, that seems to be, unlike Palestine and Israel, where you can go back and forth on the history and you can bring up a lot of good points on both sides. It seems to be a purely like not good thing on the Russian side. Like there is no defense of this. It's a horrible action. It throws the whole world order into question. And when I watch the United States, I really should say when I watch Trump be so reluctant to take an active role in that and be so reluctant to, instantiate the United States as kind of like this defender of democracy and freedom and wanting to back away from NATO, back away from Europe. I don't know. That's very sad and confusing and not cool to me. So then with all that context, looking at Vance and Trump attacking Zelensky, who is this man who has like hoisted this country on his back, who refused to leave when they were getting attacked by Russia, who has done everything he can to both cheerlead his country while also kind of like giving in to foreign leaders because he knows he has to suck up a little bit. Then to have to sit in this meeting where both Trump and Vance are repeating literal Russian propaganda talking points that he's already been corrected on for Trump. I don't know, man. I feel really, I don't know how anybody can look at that and be like, yeah, Zelensky definitely messed up there. Yeah. That's my coming in, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So we know, I mean, I start my analysis from the understanding that we know who Trump is. There is no point in being surprised by Donald Trump, his behavior, his motivations, and in early 2025. We've been watching this man for almost a decade now in politics. More than that, he was doing the birther stuff before that. So, more than that, he's been talking nonsense for 35 years. So we know who this man is at this point. Now, taking Trump as like who he is, the question is like, how did Zelensky perform in the White House? Like, did he accomplish what he needed to do? Now, you could say that the minerals deal was sort of stupid and he shouldn't have gone and signed it. Like, okay, that's one opinion. Then he probably shouldn't have gone to the U.S. He probably should have, I don't know, asked for some other kind of meeting or something else. But, this was supposed to be the time when they signed this minerals deal. So obviously, he thought that, there was something to be gained from that. And I think it's not like all these people like Lindsey Graham and like the Wall Street Journal editorial board and all these people who thought the minerals deal was like progress, these people who've always supported Ukraine. I think they were right. I think there was a way to psychologically manipulate Trump into him kind of putting his ego on the line when it came to Ukraine. And so I watched the entirety of the press conference for the first 40 minutes, and then the last like 15 minutes was the time when they fought. And like if you were a supporter of Ukraine, there was a lot to be happy about in that first 40 minutes. For example, they would ask Trump explicitly, "Will you keep sending money and arms to Ukraine?" And I don't know if it's money, but arms. He said yes. Like he says, he was saying it unequivocally yes. He'd been saying it yes in the days leading up to the minerals deal. So he got that. He also did this thing where they would say, whenever they would bring up the point, reasonable point, Putin, you can't trust Putin. Trump would always say, he never broke a deal under me, right? It was always about me. It was like he invaded under Biden. He wouldn't have invaded under me. And so he does this. He keeps going back to previous presidents, and he liked to make this comparison. So his ego was like, set on this thing. I'm going to send money to Ukraine. We're going to send aid to Ukraine at least. I am going to be on their side. And like my ego is wrapped up in the idea that Putin trusts me and Putin likes me, right? And so if you're Zelensky, that's what you want. And maybe you're correct that Putin will, without a security guarantee, Putin is going to keep fighting. Putin is going to, come regroup and attack again. But at that point, I mean, Trump is kind of bought into the idea that Ukrainians need to be defended. And we saw this in the first administration, right? Trump comes in, he is like kind of, skeptical about supporting Ukraine. He tries to remove sanctions on Ukraine. Congress passes a bill to keep those sanctions on. Trump vetoes it. They override his veto. Trump ends up sending, and he bragged about this in the press conference too. He becomes the first person to send deadly aid to Ukraine. Now he brags about it. He gets impeached. He goes and says, Obama didn't give them anything. I gave them javelins and so forth. He brought that up again during the press conference. So this is a very simple man who can be kind of manipulated and pressured into going one or two ways.
Sure,
and
but just so real quick, I guess when we think of it that way, just as a quick thing, did you date before your current wife? Did you ever have other girlfriends or whatever?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
ever you ever have somebody ask you for advice? You ever in a situation where you say something or you do something, you're late for a dinner or whatever, and then after that the person's like, "I'm breaking up with you," or somebody says like, "Oh, she broke up with me because I didn't respond to her text in time," and like the
Yeah.
answer to this is always like, "Well, clearly this wasn't the issue. There must have been like a piling on of stuff, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back." Like, what does it say about Trump's supposed hypothetical commitment to Ukraine if all it took was Zelensky asking a not even like a brutal question, but like a legitimate question to Vance for everything to break down that quickly and that easily? And if it was going to break down that quickly and that easily, then who's to say that Putin couldn't have worked Trump over if Trump was literally meeting with him alone, which he was in Riyadh, or for all the other people that talked to him? And the fact that Zelensky already had to sit there and take these unhinged comments, "Why did you wear a suit?" from fucking MTG's husband and shit. Like, why? I feel like that's a deal where like we can say like, well, Zelensky should have said this or that, but nothing signed there. One, it wouldn't have meant anything because there was no security guarantee attached, and two, if it was that easy to tear it apart, it could have fallen apart for 50 million other reasons as well. No.
Well, yes, that is a danger. I mean, the flattery from Putin, he carries around his letters from Kim Jong-un and shows them to people and is very proud of them. So
Mm-hmm.
it can work. It can work, the other direction too. But I would say that the building a relationship with Trump and getting Trump to like you is a kind of more long-term thing. And so it's like a kind of ass kissing that sort of needs to go on, and the Ukrainians, for whatever reason, haven't been able to do it. And
Well, but you
so,
say haven't
like,
been able
yeah,
to do it, but that's because Trump has decided I'm meeting with Putin alone. I'm not going
well,
to Ukraine. I don't even think Vance went to Ukraine. Like,
okay, so but what was these last like there's reasons why, like, okay, so Putin goes and Putin says he can have our minerals. We have mineral deals, right? We have bigger minerals than Ukraine. He said this recently. And it's like, well, I mean, it's like there's more political constraints and when it comes to domestically being friends with Putin than there is being friends with Zelensky, right? So like they can both flatter him. Like it's kind of easier for Zelensky because like there's more meetings, there's more people in Trump's ear. Right before this press conference with Zelensky, I mean, the UK Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron, they both visited Trump. They're all trying to tell him, be friends with Zelensky, right? So there's a lot of pressure pushing in the like pro Zelensky direction, not so much in the pro Putin direction, although Trump kind of has affinity for him regardless. And so like you have to answer like, was it going to break up anyway? Like maybe, I don't know, but like the trend of like since this minerals deal was coming together was like it looked like a process of Trump starting to like Ukraine, starting to have his ego sort of intertwined with the idea that I'm going to be the peacemaker,
yeah,
and it
but like
just
just think about when you say starting to have a mineral deal with Ukraine, we're talking about like an extortion racket, an extraction racket that's being talked about, right? For firstly, because any sort of guarantee to steal resources from Ukraine to help them broker peace, that that even if they did that full deal, that Trump's not planning on getting any territory back for Ukraine. That he doesn't want to put Ukraine's nowhere near NATO, nowhere near any kind of concrete security guarantee. Trump wasn't willing to make any of that. The idea that Zelensky, like, yeah, one thing that people don't understand too, this happens even with me in debates and stuff, is that like what you sit there and take and tolerate, like to some extent does matter. And we're looking at this retrospectively like, oh, for sure they would have signed a good deal. But imagine if Zelensky would have held his tongue and allowed himself to be shit on constantly by these two fucking jokes by Vance and Trump, by them making lie after lie after lie, some of which Trump has already been corrected on, like by Macron in person, right? And then they go to do a deal afterwards and then nothing materializes because Trump's not willing to give any security guarantees to Zelensky. Now I feel like the whole media would be like, it was unreal. Zelensky commands no respect. They literally lied to his face on TV in a press conference, and Zelensky wouldn't say anything like Macron did. Like I think even Stern or whatever did. Like I feel like it's a lose-lose, but I think the problem is just that we're evaluating this from Zelensky has to be the perfect pope and see the future and everything, and Trump and Vance get to be treated like basically retarded children who can flip on a dime, although it always only seems to be against Ukraine, which is also questionable, but
the so yeah, I mean, you're not gonna fact check Trump. Like you're gonna have to listen to his lies. Like okay, like everyone who has a relationship with Trump in any way
But those
needs to
lies are
do that.
important because they inform the American public and where we stand, right? How many people in America don't want to help Ukraine because we've given more money to them than Europe? We don't know where the $350 billion is. It's all been stolen anyway,
What
right?
Trump,
Like,
let him have a fantasy world where like now they're giving us all our, the minerals deal, like what was originally negotiated versus what the end result ended up being was very, very different, because the first version was like Ukraine gives you 500 billion right off the bat. It was also that like it was all the basically minerals, basically everything that Ukraine is doing right now, the US would get half of it. This new one had no 500 billion requirement, and basically said only future projects, like, future kind of, drilling, for future kind of mining operations. Who knows, like, how many future mining or oil operations like Ukraine is going to start in the next coming years in the middle of this war. By the time it happens, a Democratic president can be in office.
I,
He can rip up the whole thing.
I understand what you're saying, but this is the equivalent to walking in and there's a rape victim, and you're like, okay, we came through and we got justice for the rape victim. It's like, oh, really? Well, what happened? Well, we told the rape victim they no longer have to get raped by getting fucked anymore. They only have to give the person head for the next 6 months, and then afterwards, like, we're gonna go back to everything being chill. We're so far away from any kind of actual just resolution on anything that we're talking about, like, well, we're not taking 500 billion in resources from them. We just have like some claim on future projects. Like, why are we taking anything from them at all?
Well, I
and
mean,
we're not getting anything for them either. Like,
because it's Donald John Trump. What do you want to do? Convince him of the rules-based international order? Convince him about the morality of not invading
to some
other
extent,
countries?
yes,
Like,
but
what
I
do
feel
you
like
want from
if
him?
there was enough public pushback, because we can both agree on one thing, the Trump flattery goes both ways, right? Trump picks and chooses who he likes, and he'll get rid of people he doesn't like. But if the American public, if we had 75% support in the American public for Ukraine, Trump would probably have fucking boots on the ground because he's that
Yeah,
crazy.
but we
'Cause
don't have that.
yeah,
we
but
don't have
part of
that
the reason why
because
we
half the
don't.
country is just depends on what Trump says.
Exactly. But when Trump is allowed to sit there and lie with impunity, that's a problem. It's not just that we have to deal with Trump's lies. Well, I'm sorry,
Well, he's
that
not
like
going to be
diplomats.
allowed to lie with impunity. Like the media is going to fact check him, and Zelensky's going to fact check him, and his base is going to desert him. I mean, what's allow him to lie with impunity mean?
Allow him to say things that are just completely and totally not true, that are also forming the American opinion on how we should be approaching Ukraine.
Let him say things that are not true. That like we are getting this awesome deal from Ukraine, and you're all going to be rich because like he's going to say stupid things that are not true.
Yeah,
You
but
are trying to direct him
that deal
towards
doesn't help anything. Like, I'm curious, do you think that Russia is going to give up anything with Trump negotiating these deals? Besides future conquest of all of Ukraine, if they could.
So, it's hard to say what Russia will do, right? It's like they could, Putin could sign a ceasefire and have a plan that in 4 years I'm going to invade Ukraine again, and he could die in 2 years, right? Or something could happen politically in Russia that makes it like difficult to start a new war. I mean, so it's like it's hard
Well,
to
no, but
know
I'm
what
saying that like if the war ends right now, do you see how much land Russia has? They have like the whole land bridge going over to Crimea. They've got so much territory in Ukraine, and I think they've formally annexed most, if not all of it. Do you think any of that is going back to Ukraine with Trump arranging some kind of deal?
No, I think that that's probably gone. But I mean, is Ukraine going to get it back? That's the question. Because we've been, how is Ukraine going to get it? We have this kind of stalemate where, I just saw that the third year of the war had more casualties than the first and the second year of the war put together, and it's moving in the wrong direction.
Sure.
It's moving.
Well, when you
towards,
say how can Ukraine get more, they can't. But with the U.S. negotiating, the U.S. could say we're going to invade Russia, or we're going to do a no-fly zone over Ukraine, or we're going to start bombing strategic targets in Russia until the war stops and you retreat. That's a statement the U.S. could make, and the U.S. has the power to make it.
You'd support starting to bomb strategic targets in Russia?
In Russia, no. I would support a no-fly zone over Ukraine, because what's going to happen next? Is Putin going to start?
I would. Yeah, I would support
but
that
I'm
too.
saying that like when we talk about what are we going to do, shouldn't that be Russia's prerogative? Like, why is it that Russia can operate with all the strategic freedom open to them, and on our side we're like, well, what are we going to do? I don't know what we can do. We're the United States of America. What the fuck do you mean, what are we going to do? We could do anything. Literally, we could turn the whole country into glass if we wanted to. Not that we should, yeah. But I'm just saying it's strange that Trump can be so heavy-handed with his negotiating tactics against our allies, right? He can talk about 25% tariffs against the EU, against Mexico, against Canada, but when it's Russia and Putin, he has to treat him with kids' gloves. Why is Russia never in a spot where they have to make a difficult decision? Like, everything so far for Russia has just been a breeze. It's been so easy for them. Why?
Look, I think the best case scenario coming out of this minerals deal was basically, okay, they weren't going to probably get a explicit security guarantee, but that's what you get. That's what you go to the negotiations for, right? You have the immediate question was the flow of weapons, right? That's like the immediate, the immediate thing that Ukraine needs to defend itself. So Trump was cool with that. Trump was saying, very explicitly, we're going to keep doing that. So Ukraine, at the very least, gets its weapons.
Status quo, but which we both agree is not good right now, right?
Well, sure. I mean, better than what they might do now, which is cut them off after this latest stuff. And basically, you have the Ukrainians talking about putting peacekeepers in Ukraine. Trump, I don't know, might go along with that. Russia might not. But like, if they don't, maybe the talks break down, and maybe Trump blames Putin, and like we learn something that it's like going to be impossible to make a negotiation with Putin. Maybe we learned that during the process, right? But there's something short of like bringing Ukraine into NATO or even giving security guarantees. There is like put European peacekeepers there, get American companies on the ground, make Trump think that like Ukraine is like, part of his, legacy. He did this peace deal, which Biden didn't do. I thought it was so psychologically telling. He kept going back to like, they did it under Biden. They did this under Biden. The war started under Biden. He just does this for like every issue.
Yeah,
and
but he's looking for, when you say he's looking for a peace deal for his legacy, he's looking for an easy out. Like what he wants to do, you agree or disagree? Tell me if you agree or disagree with this. In my mind, what Trump wants to do is he wants to freeze the borders where they are right now. Ukraine is forced to permanently cede all the territory that Russia has to Russia permanently and to give up all claims to it, okay, on top of a ceasefire and on top of a guarantee for 99 years or whatever that Ukraine doesn't join NATO, and maybe even some restrictions on what Ukraine is allowed to do in terms of deals with the EU for trade or Russia. Like, that's the deal that Trump is looking to sign. And if they were left to the three of them to negotiate between Ukraine, Trump, and Putin, that's the deal that would be negotiated. That's what Trump wants. And Trump will walk away thinking that's a victory. But that's insane. Like what? Like Ukraine doesn't need Trump to fully surrender, right?
I mean, it might need Trump to not like Russia not keep going, because the possibility is Russia just sees it's winning, and Russia just keeps going on, and they're not sensitive to casualties necessarily. Yeah, I mean, like it really does depend on kind of.
You agree that Ukraine can't accept that deal, right? Why would they ever go to the United States, the biggest, baddest boy on the block, for them to basically do a Doha Agreement 2.0? Yeah.
Give up, you're saying, because the deal is a ceasefire, give up the land to Russia, and
no NATO, no security guarantees, probably maybe even restrictions on trade with Europe. Like, why would?
Well, no, they would. I mean, that would be it would be bad. It would depend. I mean, look, if they're getting a lot of weapons from the United States, they're basically, they're not NATO, but they're like NATO trainers were in Ukraine. NATO is working with Ukraine right now. There's like intelligence, officials. There's cooperation.
Barely,
so like
but yeah.
Ukraine freezes the borders. Ukraine won't be this like weakling that has nothing. Ukraine will be a country with a lot of support from Europe and from America.
You keep saying, remember though, that's the status quo, and they're already not doing that great. So it's not like the status quo is a positive.
They're doing not that great. Just with, I mean, it's the same thing. Just it's no more fighting, no more people dying with these large numbers, right?
But Ukraine can do that right now. Ukraine could. My guess is if Zelensky went to Putin and said, "Listen, here's the terms, the same ones that America's getting now," Putin would probably say, "Yeah, okay, I'm good to be out of this war. I'm glad to. I need, because my economy's hurting. The sanctions are fucking me. It's bad PR, right?" Putin would probably just accept that kind of surrender from Zelensky. Period. I would imagine, without the U.S. being there at all. What's the point of the U.S. even brokering this deal?
It's interesting you think that, because a lot of people say that Putin wouldn't accept. People who are kind of take your pro-Ukraine position argue that Putin wouldn't accept that he'd want to keep going, and that he's not going to be happy until he takes over every inch of Ukraine. If you can stop and just freeze the border right now, it sucks. It's a reward for aggression, sure, but like hundreds of thousands are dying for moving the border an inch or two, like every couple months or so. I mean, it's just really a kind of ridiculous situation. So yeah, it sort of sucks that's not a morally satisfying outcome. But like, somebody from the Biden administration actually reached out to me and told me that like if they could have got that in the Biden administration, they would have been happy with it. I mean, I think a lot of people, even who support Ukraine, would just say, let Ukraine be a sovereign country. It's lost part of its territory. It fought heroically. It survived.
Well, you say NATO, let Ukraine, that's not compatible with that. Let Ukraine be a sovereign country. We've accepted that that's not the case now, right? If somebody comes in and they want to take territory from them, that's literally the opposite of having sovereignty.
Well, they've lost sovereign territory, but they're still, Mexico lost territory to the U.S. They were still a country, right? If they can sort of solidify the borders and have a peace deal, I mean, it sucks that you can't tell them they can't join the EU. Like Russia cannot have, I think, that degree of like ability to veto their internal relations like that can. But look, Russia had control over Ukraine because there was a lot of pro-Russian parts of Ukraine, right? They had the east, they had Crimea, they had Donetsk, Luhansk, basically all the pro-Russian parts. If they're going to be lopped off, and Ukraine is going to be like the most anti-Russian state ever. Like I don't think Russia is
Sure.
going to be
Wait.
able
Also,
to
but
have.
wait. Hold on that. When you say Russia had control of Ukraine, it's because they invaded, not because they were
Well,
big, like
no, I mean
ethnically.
Russia. Even before that, like there was always pro-Russian politicians and candidates, and they were,
Wait, wait,
there was kind of a divide.
pro-Russian politicians, and that like maybe they had like a slightly warmer view of Russia, but not like we want to secede from this country and join
No, not
Russia.
that.
Those are
No, I
wildly
wouldn't. No,
different.
I would. Yeah. No, not that. Not that. There's no support for secession.
Yeah.
But there was like people who had a vision of like instead of being NATO EU, we would like sign. We would be friends with Russia and Belarus and join whatever they have.
Yeah, like the
Whatever
trade
they're.
union or whatever. But like, so here's a
Yeah.
question: What is it? Because people
That's going to
always
be gone. Nobody's going to want that. No, in the future of Ukraine.
here's my issue right now. If Russia invades Poland, do you think the United States would help?
Yeah, I think the United States would help.
Why?
I think the article
Because all of the complaints that we've had, it could be World War III, it could be nuclear war, it could be the destruction of so many lives, the meat grinders and all that. Why would we expect the United States to help? And all of those arguments would carry over to a NATO country being attacked.
First of all, look at sort of Poland's recent military spending and the size of their military. They have a pretty serious military. I mean, if Russia's found Ukraine difficult, they're going to have a lot more difficult from Poland. Now, the Balkans is maybe a more interesting case, right? Because the
Because those are
Balkans
still
is
some
not
unaligned
really
countries,
as
right?
defensible. What's that?
Are there?
Oh, the Balkans.
I think there
Yeah.
are unaligned countries in the Balkans as well, right?
No, I didn't mean the Balkans. I meant the Baltics. I meant
Oh, sure.
Lithuania.
Okay, well, the Baltics, yeah, those are NATO. But
it's
like,
NATO.
yeah, I don't know. Why would we expect the United States to step up? Do you really think Trump would say we're deploying our military to go and save Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania? Do you think Trump cares about any of these countries? I feel like the answer would be no. It's
I don't think Trump cares. I think Trump is driven by a completely kind of tunnel vision, zero sum
yeah, I
understanding.
agree. So the answer would be no. He wouldn't help them,
He
right?
wouldn't care. He wouldn't care personally, but he does care about being Donald J. Trump and being seen as a tough guy and being someone who's kind of important. People don't mess with. Look, he looks like he can't. You can't have an attack on a NATO country and then Trump. Like I know he creates an alternative reality for himself, but like things break through every once in a while. Like
Hold on,
doesn't.
you're saying this, but everybody said this exact same thing about Ukraine. You can't invade countries in Europe and steal territory.
You can't invade NATO countries. I mean that's the difference. The U.S. has this long-standing commitment, and there's just you imagine the kind of political backlash to that within the United States. There's a lot more Poles than Ukrainians in the U.S. I mean, Poles would put up a much
Sure, but
bigger
do you
fight.
think how many Estonians or Latvians or Lithuanians live in the U.S.?
Probably not. No, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. That's hard. Like I don't like then if you're worried about that, it might be a case for keeping the war going, tying Russia down so it doesn't try to take one of those countries. But Russia is this Ukraine thing was a lot harder than they expected. They did not expect this to drag out for 3 years and have hundreds of thousands of casualties, and for them to get so little territory compared relative to what they were expecting. So the idea that like they're gonna just bite off a new war with NATO, like seems far-fetched. I mean, look, Trump went.
But look at what it does to the legitimacy of Putin and his actions, right? Like he did the same in Georgia. Now he's done the same in Ukraine, and he did it despite the entire Western world. Like this isn't just a victory against Ukraine. This is arguably since 91. This would be Russia's first military victory, he could say, against the United States and the entirety of the West as well, right? Because we didn't really support Georgia in that way. Definitely not Moldova in 91, right? But like Ukraine was getting funding from everybody, Five Eyes, intelligence assistance, NATO intelligence assistance, weapons from all over. Like for Russia to walk away with a big dick win through all of that, why can't it be that Russia has to think, if we invade here, we might get fucked. If we invade here, maybe we're going to get nuked. Why are all the difficult decisions on our end when we have all the power? Why does Russia never have to think about those difficult decisions?
I think they do have to. I mean, I think if they're thinking about taking Estonia or Latvia, they're thinking like we might get nuked or we might get attacked. I mean, I don't think that they don't think that like there's potential danger there. And then, yeah, I mean, like, what's the alternative? So you're saying they're going to portray it as a victory?
Of course, yeah, for sure.
If they get anything out of it, so but the only alternative then is you have to go all out for Ukraine to retake every piece of territory, right? That's the only way that Putin can have an unambiguous loss.
Well, I don't think he like. There's a world where, and I mean, like, I can play. Obviously, we can play macro politics, but I'm sure it's all incredibly complicated. But like, there's a world where, in my perfect dream, where Trump comes in, the United States does big dick it. We no-fly zone all of Ukraine, and maybe even start providing air assistance. And we say, listen, Putin is allowed to have. We will force Ukraine to make them sign like a 99-year lease on like Sevastopol so that Putin can have access to his fucking port in Crimea, because that is important to him. We give him that, and then all the rest of the territory goes back. Maybe there's some joint reparations fund that the US and the rest of the world can contribute to, or whatever the fuck, including Russia. And then Putin gets to say, well, you know, we fought a brave battle, and, you know, now we've guaranteed our rights to Sevastopol. He can walk away feeling that way. Maybe we even allow some population transfer if Russians want to leave, so they can have their Civil War, you know, victory talking point, whatever. And then like everybody walks away with that. But at the very least, then, like, Putin can sell it publicly that, like, well, look, it was a win. He knows privately that he got, you know, his shit checked. But right now, it's just, I don't understand why the whole world is so feckless. Why are we so weak in pretending that Russia is the one? Like Trump was saying over and over again, you don't have the cards. We have the cards. We've spent so much money. What happened to all of that? The world's about to find out why America doesn't have social health care, ha ha ha, with our military. Okay, well, now I don't even know why we have a military. We're not doing anything. I don't know. Doesn't that seem sad to you that the U.S. isn't doing anything?
During the Cold War, I mean, the Czechs, the Hungarians, they rebelled against Soviet power, and they were crushed. We just accepted. We were much strong. We were stronger than the Soviets as far as between us and our allies. But there were realities on the ground that we had to accept and live with. I don't buy it that Putin is going to say, I'm going to get a lease on Crimea. Like no, they're going to keep at least Donetsk, Luhansk. They're going to fight for it, right? And so, like, yeah, I mean, we could like do a no-fly zone over all of Ukraine, I guess, including the parts that Russia controls and considers part of its territory. You could do that. Maybe he folds. Maybe it's a game of chicken and you win, and I would be
he would
happy if
have
that
to
was the
fold,
case.
right? Like, what's Putin going to do? Oh, fuck it, I will start to go to war with. Like, if they're having this trouble with Ukraine,
he escalates. He uses a tactical nuke against
but then
Ukraine,
this would be
and then it dares you to do the next thing.
But wouldn't this be like, would Putin deploy a nuclear weapon in an offensive war? You think Putin would be the first? Like, would he even have the support of like China to do that? I feel like the entire world would look at him like a madman.
Not. You're putting in. Yes, you're right. The nuclear taboo is pretty strong, and
Yeah.
when there was talk of using it earlier, there was pushback at it. But you're putting him in a tough situation. The other alternative
He's
is
putting himself in a
Putin.
tough situation. Make him have a tough
Yes,
situation, because right
yes,
now there are no tough situations for him. Why? Why can't he be in a tough situation? Good.
Look, he's losing. I mean, he's losing. By the scores is tens of thousands, like monthly. Like
He doesn't give a fuck. Especially if he comes away with a win against the entirety of the West. And think about what that does for the Russian nationalist feelings. Like, yes, we beat America and everybody. Yeah.
So you put him in a tough situation, and maybe you play chicken. Maybe he folds. Great. I'm happy if he does. Maybe he says, I'm going to take the next escalatory step and then see what you do, because he's desperate now. Now he's desperate. Now he thinks he's going to have to give up everything. You're saying you put in front of him, we're going to do no-fly zone over Ukraine. You give up everything. That's the only way we have peace. Maybe you got to at least
Sure. By give up everything, I mean give up the territory that he's invaded, not even any of sovereign Russia, just the territory that he's invaded. It's an offensive war.
Okay, so you put him in that situation, and we agree. And the point of you putting him in that situation is you want him to feel like a loser, right?
No. You want him to feel like if he's going to invade, you ever play poker?
I play poker.
If you play poker well, right? If you're faced with really tough decisions in the middle of lots of hands, it means you're probably playing poorly. You're making mistakes. You should never have to face tough decisions over and over and over again. It means that you're doing something that's suboptimal in your play. If Putin is in an area where he has to make a tough decision, it should mean that he's made a mistake. People try to avoid tough decisions. But if we take all of those off the table for him, and he just is able to, float on through with all this negotiating power somehow, right? Russia is a smaller country. They're suffering a lot of losses too. They face a ton of sanctions. They are facing a rough economy. How are the decisions so simple on his end? Like, why can't we put a tough decision to him and force him to act a little bit more maturely? And I don't even think oligarchs would let him. Like, imagine you're Putin, and we agree that he's probably run to some extent by appeasing the oligarchs in his country, the ones that support and fund him, right? Imagine they're looking at the U.S., and the U.S. is like, we'll unfreeze all these funds. All the sanctions are being unfrozen. Your guys' economy will function again. Just give Ukraine back their fucking territory, and you can even have your Sevastopol lease. Maybe even all of Crimea. Fuck it. Maybe that's the big concession that Ukraine has to make or whatever, right? At that point, would Putin say, I think I'm going to start nuking like the Black Sea. I'm going to start doing tactical nukes instead. What do the oligarchs looking at him think? Like, excuse me, we're about to lose the support from the rest of it's about to become BICs instead of BRICS.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to like us if you start nuking on an offensive war. Just let us get our fucking money back. Why? And then he has enough to walk away victorious. We have enough to walk away victorious to sell it to our publics. And then the world just goes on. But we can do that deal. We're the United States.
Yeah, I don't believe as a factual matter that Putin, the oligarch, if the oligarchs were as powerful as that story makes it, I think this war probably would have been over a long time ago. This hasn't been good for them. I think it's more the national security elites, not the people who have a financial interest in good relations with the West, who Putin cares about satisfying. And look, you can put him. He faced. I mean, like he doesn't face tough decisions. I mean, Kursk was invaded. He had to rely on North Korea. They're sending more North Korean troops. He's getting, there's infrastructure attacks. There's drone attacks going into Russia. He was almost overthrown. I mean, the Prigozhin thing is such a weird thing to think about in retrospect.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, he almost it almost happened. And so he's facing tough decisions. Now you can make him face a tougher decision. The problem is it's a gamble, and he takes a decision that escalates. He uses a tactical nuke. Okay, you say the world's gonna hate it, whatever. Like he's gonna hate it if basically NATO comes in and says basically surrender. That's what that is. Your deal is basically surrender. They've lost hundreds of thousands of lives. They've been isolated from the world over these last 3 years. And Putin, just because Trump decided to talk tough and they became united with the Europeans, Putin pulls out and says, "Okay, we get Crimea. We get to use Crimea, and that's it." That's a horrible scenario for him. That's like the thing that could make him say, okay, to hell with it. Like it's going to look bad if we use nuclear weapons. So
he doesn't need Ukraine. He doesn't need, and it's not like Russia's success in the future.
He needs to survive somehow.
Yeah, but his survival doesn't depend on him controlling Ukraine or peeling some parts of Ukrainian territory. It's not like it's going to be.
It probably does. I mean, failure in war is like a common thing that brings down leaders all throughout history.
Yeah,
right?
But on that level, he's already failed. They failed 2 weeks in when they weren't able to immediately take over the country. Like the fact that we both agree this going on for 3 years was unforeseen in the beginning. So I mean, like he's already had a failure in that regard. But again, it can't be why. Like even how you're talking right now, why is his well-being the only thing that the entire West has to be concerned with?
Because he controls a large nuclear arsenal, and we have to think about that.
Okay, but again, if that's your answer, then he goes to Estonia next. What changes?
Because Ukraine is different. Why didn't he go to Estonia before 2014? Why doesn't he go to Estonia now?
Because Estonia didn't kick out a leader in a country that Putin was gaining more and more control over when Yanukovych got kicked out. That's why he went in 2014. But I mean, like, why, using the same argument you're using now, he goes to Estonia. What do we do? He still has the nukes. Is the nuclear saber rattling that strong?
What's your theory as to why he doesn't go into Estonia today?
Today, I don't think he wants any war right now. I think he's probably like stressed to the fucking limit right now, I would imagine.
Okay. And so, like, why is it impossible to imagine he gets, this whatever he's got now, 15% of Ukraine. It goes down. And so it's like, you're saying things that kind of are like contradictory. You're like, oh, it's been such a failure. But then, like, if we give him this territory, he's going to be seen as like a big success, and he's appetite. He's going to whet his appetite, right? So it's like it's kind of these things. These things are kind of contradictory. You can portray the war as a failure, or you can portray it as a success.
Wait, hold on. Walk through that again.
Okay, so basically, you say we can't have like this outcome where like Putin is where basically Putin comes out a winner, right? So you can't surrender, this portion of Ukraine that he controls or any significant part of it.
Yes.
Right. And at the same time, you're saying he's already failed because they didn't go to Kiev within 3 days, and they didn't take over, and it's been 3 years, and they lost all those people. So these are sort of contradictory things. You're saying he's a failure already, but we have to because of the current state of the conflict. But then if it freezes right now, he's going to come out as a winner.
Well, there's two different aspects to winning and losing war for all wars, right? You have the public aspect, and then you've got the private aspect, right? Where you can sell a win to the public, depending on how you speak to them, and dictatorships and democracies do this in different ways. And then you privately, whether or not you can sell a win as successful or not successful, right? Do you know anything about like the Yom Kippur War in '73 for Israel? Right?
Yeah, I've read about it.
Technically, that was like a failure. The Arab states lost, But publicly, it felt like a massive success because in the first few days of that war, Israel was losing a ton of territory and were on the back foot. And that was a huge boon to the Arab confidence when it came to fighting with Israel, even though on paper they completely lost, right? But to the public, Golda Meir, that whole cabinet had to resign, the government was kicked out, Israel was super mad, even though they won on paper, right? So what I'm saying is that for Russia, like when we talk about making an off-ramp, there can be an off-ramp where Putin is able to sell it publicly. We got Crimea, we got Sevastopol, like we did it, we won, guys, even though privately he knows like, okay, fuck, I need to be more mindful when I do shit like this in the future because I'm going to get my shit checked, as opposed to right now I can do whatever the fuck I want and then just rattle my nukes whenever I, want to be unimpeded. So we can sell it publicly, understand what happened privately, and then the same thing can happen on the Ukraine side, and then everybody kind of gets to walk away with I guess feeling like they got something basically. Whereas right now, I just don't understand. Like they did this in Moldova in '91, and they took away Transnistria. They did this in Georgia in 2006, 2008, and they knocked out South Odessa and like whatever the fuck that other place was. Now they've done it in Ukraine, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Or was it 2023 they invaded? They've done it in Ukraine where they're taking territory. If we assume that he's able to do this over and over and over again, why would he not go to another country next? Why would this be the last one? Why would Ukraine be the last one that he does? Why, like, how would we?
Because Ukraine was a lot more painful than he thought it was going to be. All those were relatively, small. They were basically nothing in terms of casualties. I mean, this is a kind of this has been a massive loss for Russia. But I like your framing. I like how we can. I think the best possible scenario, right? And I think we're agreeing here is that like there's a way where Putin can save some face in front of the Russian public. He can say we had a victory or we got something out of this thing. At the same time, the rest he sort of understands that like it's would be crazy to try anything more. And I think that like. And you're saying, and you are saying that just giving him that lease deal on Sevastopol is going to, or Crimea is going to be enough. Where that would mean they have less than they started this war, right? When they started this war, they had much of Donetsk and Luhansk. They had those two major cities, right? So they're gonna go this 3-year war. They're gonna lose hundreds of thousands of people. They're gonna isolate themselves from the entire world, and then he's going to go to the Russian people and have less territory than when they started the war and fool them into thinking that he won.
I mean that territory is warred. That's like contested. There's an active conflict. Like imagine Putin being able to go back and say, because remember again, this is an offensive war. It's not like these are parts of Russia they're losing. If Putin can go back and say, we have Crimea, we've done it, you allow for that population transfer. Because ignore what the West says about NATO expansion and that cringe shit. That's not what Putin was talking about to his people, right? They're talking about civil war and Russians being killed. Maybe we allow some population transfer there if they want. Putin can say we were able to save the Russians from Ukraine that were being genocided. You can sign some bullshit agreement that says the Azov part of the battalion is fucking disbanded or whatever the fuck, and then he has Sevastopol. Putin can go back and sell it to his people as a win, so he's not getting fucking executed or murdered by some oligarch. And then Ukraine gets to keep all of their territory except for maybe Crimea or just Sevastopol. And then everybody kind of walks away from their understanding that okay, we're done. I feel like that's a better deal than allowing him to get everything he's gotten here. And we say that like, well, it was harder than they thought it would be, but that's because Russia hasn't fought a real battle. But imagine all of the data that they've collected from this war. Imagine how much he's learned about his military now. If they went into a battle again, it's not going to be this reckless, right? They know what they have to do now. They know what they fucked up on. And the Baltics, no offense to the Baltics, are probably gonna be a lot easier to steamroll through than fucking Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean they are, but he's also learned something about the West. I think that like I think
Which
that
is
there
we
has
have
to
no
be some.
cohesion. What did he learn about the West that we're
Well,
not?
I mean, look, I think he's learned how hard it is to conquer a country. Like he thought, like what he thought at the beginning was that, 3 days, and basically our Western intelligence agencies thought this too, not just Putin. But like they learned that people don't want to be ruled by Russia and people will fight back against Russia. So I think he has learned some information that like conquering territory is not nearly as hard, is not nearly as easy as he thought it was, and it's going to cost a lot more. And at least we were united, for a while. We did have a lot of support to Ukraine. It was isolating internationally, probably more than they thought.
Sure, but he gets all the data and all the training and all the practice of it here. It's going to be an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude easier for the Baltics, right?
We know about drones, and we know about. I don't know. Did you see the New York Times piece on drones this morning? It's like 70% of the casualties now in Ukraine, in the Ukraine war, are now caused by drones. So it's like it's a completely different war from what it was in 2022. We have that information too. We also have technological, superiority and more resources in the end. I think that Putin. It's like his less. If the war stops right now, Putin is not going to be like, wow, that was Easy. That took 3 years. That took 3. He doesn't have many years left. He's like 70, right? 3 years in a 70-year-old's life is a long time. It took him just to get that 20% of Ukraine against a non-NATO country where he thought he had support among certain parts of the Ukrainian population. That was tough. And like maybe he just like dies happy because look, he got 20% of Ukraine. Like that's an amazing accomplishment, like from like his perspective, from his logic, right?
Sure, I
So,
understand,
you
but
know,
like
maybe maybe he goes dies. And he's
let's
happy.
say there is no politics. Politics doesn't exist, and you can just do we're playing Risk or some military war game, right? If Putin is allowed to lick his wounds for 5 years, okay, after taking
He's
how
gonna
much
be
he's taken,
old.
what?
He's going to be old in 5 years.
Sure, but let's say
He's
okay,
70, he's 71.
well, listen, Trump is like 83, isn't he? 82.
Yeah.
Bad people live a long time, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
But let's say that he's allowed to kind of like recoup, do an analysis of the military. Ukraine had a population of almost 45 million people at the start of that war. I think the Baltics all combined have a population of like 5 million people. Do you think they would have the same amount of difficulty rolling through the Baltics as they did in Ukraine? Are we about to see Estonian super soldiers like fighting especially a more trained Russian military that's had now combat experience, that has like more modern abilities to engage, on a military level? Like,
Look, it's a risk. I cannot guarantee that any kind of deal, no matter what happens, like it's like you could speculate. Okay, he takes your deal, which is like which is basically just taking Crimea. He's so pissed. He feels like I'm gonna die soon. I need to get something for Russia. He goes and he tries to take. So he goes, this is gonna be
what? They
easier
already
than
got
Ukraine.
Georgia. They already got their two territories in Georgia. Why does he fucking need more? Well, also, why are we talking from the framing if we have to appease a fucking dictator? Why are we talking from the framing?
We're talking about a psychology, right? We're trying to get this man to die happy, feeling like in his stupid morality he accomplished something cool, right?
No, we don't need to do that. We need to make people respect the United States and respect it. We don't have to appease every crazy fucking dictator. No, I don't think that's a healthy framing for things. He doesn't need to die happy. Also, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I think we do.
What does this mean? Imagine you're fucking Taiwan or you're fucking Japan or South Korea and you're looking at the US and you hear Trump say, well, there's an ocean between us. Who gives a fuck? We don't want to fight everybody's battles. Who cares? We're tariffing the fuck out of everybody and we're building our own chip manufacturing in the United States. Fuck getting it from TSMC or whatever the fuck, right? What does this signal to the rest of the world in terms of, can the US be a reliable partner? Like if Taiwan was attacked, would we help?
Look, I don't know about Taiwan, but look, there is a distinction here between countries we have treaties with and those that we don't. There is politically and there is morally and there is legally, and these things do matter politically. So like it is actually a difference politically if Putin attacks Ukraine versus Poland versus
Sure.
Estonia.
Well, but I mean, like, I'm sorry, I totally could just not know this.
Japan and South Korea have formal guarantees. Taiwan doesn't. Like, there's a reason we didn't, because we thought that like China claims it. That's going to be very, very difficult. We want to help you at Taiwan. So there's no 100% guarantee we go to war with Taiwan. There never was. But we try to help them, right? I think that like there's a line to draw where we have these formal alliances versus where we don't, and this is what makes kind of Poland and these other countries you're talking about different.
For as long as Trump continues to respect NATO, but it's not out of the question that Trump just withdraws the U.S. from NATO as well, right?
I mean, Trump has, he can't do everything he wants to do, right? He can't, like, it's like there is, even within the Republican Party, there's limits on, how much they can be pushed around. So yeah, I don't think he necessarily pulls out of NATO. I think if you go to the betting markets, the odds of that are going to be very, very low.
Okay. I don't know. We're 1 month in, barely.
Yeah, we're 1 month, but this is the most frantic time. I think it sort of becomes a kind of a groove after a little while. So maybe we'll see. I get your concern. I get the kind of I get the way that the anti-Ukraine people lie all the time. You talked about the Marjorie Taylor Greene's. You said her husband. It's actually her boyfriend, talking about the suit and like just talking down and yelling at Zelensky. It is repulsive. I get your sort of attitudes towards these
Sure.
people.
I mean, I also I think that status quo stuff is hard because nobody really knows what they get from the status quo, but they can always point out things that make them unhappy, and then they can do a grass is always greener on the other side. I don't think Americans know how much we've enjoyed just having unfettered access to literally the entire world, right? Like, it wasn't until the Houthis started bombing ships that were trying to go up through the Suez Canal that people were like, wait, we can't ship stuff through here. Wait, this is super delayed. Or wait, like, this is becoming way more expensive. Like, the idea that I might not be able to buy something from India or from China, or that we have some special tariff or blockade or whatever from Europe, or, the fact that the US is just totally ceding all of the soft power that we've spent decades or nay, a century building. That's just so sad to me, and it seems so childlike and stupid that we're just going to throw all of it away for nothing. Like, nothing's even happened. Like, these are all just like words and things on paper. Like, we haven't suffered a huge military loss. We haven't had a massive assassination attempt on all of our leaders or anything. Like, it's just for no reason. We're just giving it away because Trump is fucking retarded. That just seems sad to me.
Yeah, I do wish, I mean, as much as I'm sort of taking the perspective that Zelensky screwed up, I mean, it's not that I'm not critical of kind of Trump and Vance's attitudes. Or I wish I got into a little spat with Vance actually on Twitter. I don't know if you saw, but I basically said, like, because Vance had this tweet going, we are, here's the reality. Russia is like, advancing on the battlefield, this and that, and like their manufacturing power is so awesome, and we in Europe and America have everything. And I'm just like, okay, but like, why are you telling the world this? Like, you're going to negotiations, you're starting from the perspective that like you, Russia, are so awesome and so strong, and we in the West are so weak. I think that there's a lot in their attitude that, look, they don't, I don't know. Did you watch the Vance Munich speech?
Unfortunately, yes. Jesus fucking
Okay,
Christ.
so
Me and the
I
rest of
think
Europe watched in fucking horror. Yeah.
I think this is insight. So Trump, he's got his own brain, he's got his own psychological kind of issues, but Vance, I think, is like kind of an avatar, represents like how more intellectual MAGA people see the world. And I was one of them maybe 3 or 4 years ago. The idea is basically, and look, I still think there's a point to this, although they exaggerate it and they can go in a ridiculous direction. There's a point that like Europe really doesn't have a First Amendment. Europe doesn't really have free speech. There's a lot of like cultural things that American conservatives find objectionable about Europe, and from their perspective, like, that's so bad that it outweighs like the moral gap between like
Sure. You
Europe
can say,
and
though,
Russia.
right, that perspective, that American perspective is literally fucking retarded, right?
I agree. Yes, I know people who are close to like the Trump administration who will argue with a straight face, and this is mental illness, that dissidents in the West have it harder than China and
Sure.
Russia. Like,
Or
these
even just
people are
comparing like the US and like Great Britain. Like, we could imagine an island that allows for things like defamation and child porn and unlimited spam and anything they want. And then that country could say to the US, huh, you guys think you have a First Amendment? Well, we allow you to watch or do anything here. Like, you
well,
can say whatever word. Like, that would be a stupid claim. Like, okay,
did
well,
you watch the entire 60 Minutes thing from Germany? I mean, it's beyond like just a couple like things like spam. Like, Germany has like thousands, like it has bureaus that have like thousands of people whose tweets they're looking at. Even not even being racist, calling a politician a moron or an idiot or something. The police will come and they'll take away your phone and find you.
I mean,
It's
like,
pretty
well,
ridiculous.
I would have to look at any case that's brought up because these always get horrendously miscited. It'll be like, oh, this guy got his phone taken away for calling somebody up.
Go to 60 Minutes. It was 60 Minutes. They're not some conservative
Sure.
propaganda.
I mean, I can look it up, but like, even so, like their laws, the way that they run their country, that's up to them. It's the way that they decide to do their stuff, and their democracies too. Their people can vote on their rules. They can vote on their people. Like, that's on them, right? We don't have a right to go to another country.
Russia. That's on them because they're not democracy. If you think democracy is the only thing that matters, sure. But like, some of us don't think democracy is the only thing that matters.
Wait. What did Russia have to do with any of this?
Well, because you said, well, that's just the way they run their own countries. You could say, well, we don't have to think Russia's so bad. That's just the way they run their country, or China's so bad because
Sure,
that's the way
Russia
they
and
run
China can do their stuff, but the problem with Russia right now is that they're invading another country, not that they are democratic. But I'm just saying that, like, if they have different lines that they draw on like hate speech or however they regulate it, that's fine. That doesn't mean they don't have freedom of speech just because their laws aren't like 100% with parity with our laws, right?
Well, it's a spectrum, right? If China being anti-free speech and Russia being anti-free speech is the reason why we are not, natural allies with them, or we have kind of hostility to their system of government, Europe is just on a spectrum. Europe is just kind of, Germany, I think, is like, somewhere between America and China. So it's like a legitimate
When
thing
we say
to be
somewhere
pissed about.
between, we mean like 5 steps from us and 1,000 steps from Russia or China, right?
Yeah, we can disagree on like the kind of like where exactly they are, but I'd say conservatives see that gap as vast because, like, look, you don't care about being racist online, that's like not your thing. But if your thing is being racist online, you like the U.S. Europe might look worse than Russia because like there's probably more restrictions on like speaking out against Islam or whatever, right? So it depends on kind of like what you want freedom for.
I guess, but then it's also rich that those same conservatives don't seem to have anything to say about Donald Trump suing people for stuff that he doesn't like.
No, they're hypocrites. Oh my God, they
So yeah,
as
I
soon
mean,
as
we
it
can talk
started
about freedom of speech, but
Trump.
suing the seltzer pole lady or suing 60
Yeah,
Minutes because they don't like the cut of the Kamala interview, those are insane positions to have.
MAGAs are hypocrites. Yes.
Well, any other things you want to chat about?
No, I mean I'm
Is there any
fine.
breaking point for MAGA? Like, I'm trying to do this thing more over the past few months where it's like try to go where the puck will be instead of where it is. And one of my biggest fears has been, and it's started to crop up in a few places, that Trump will not only be unable to bring down prices, but these tariffs will cause prices to go up. But the MAGA talking point, instead of saying, wow, Trump failed, things are getting more expensive, they're just going to switch to actually paying more is actually patriotic because we're buying all America now. Like, is there anything that Trump can do or any outcome that can happen that actually breaks the MAGA movement apart? Or
Well, the MAGA move. Look, there is a not like the core, not the core MAGA. Sure, I mean these people are beyond reason being reasoned with, right? There is though, I mean, public opinion, and maybe 30% of the country is MAGA cultists. If the economy goes down, I mean, we know that from the history of America. We know that from political science, the most basic thing, that things like inflation and sort of the state of the economy do drive public opinion. So, Trump could go down to a 35% approval rating, probably his floor. He probably can't possibly get beyond that. Republicans get wiped out in the midterms. They're not good. They're not a good midterm party right now because they're relying on less educated and less informed voters. So they could be just totally wiped out. Imagine how tough Elon Musk's life is going to be once the Democrats in Congress have subpoena power and they could ask what Doge was doing all this time. So yeah, I mean the 2026 midterms, it's just basic, basic political science 101. If the economy goes down, if this doesn't work, MAGA is going to suffer.
hopefully, okay. Do you think, in retrospect, seeing this month now, do you still think voting for Trump was the right call?
I'm not as horrified by the Ukraine stuff as you are. I think that you could have had like the minerals deal.
Sure.
I
Just
think
to be
you could
clear,
have
the
had.
Ukraine stuff is like, I love my foreign policy, but that's probably like 6 or 7 on the list. I would say that the insane handling of the Gaza Strip, foreign policy wise, that's crazy. The wanting to step away from NATO is crazy. Suing people or having suits settled as he's the president of the United States is crazy.
Yeah,
Everything that happened with the Eric Adams stuff, what the fuck?
that stuff is bad. There,
Not bad, horrible. That's
well, I
insane.
mean,
The pay for
surprised
play, the quid pro quo for Eric Adams, that was crazy.
Look, I think I'm surprised you bringing up Gaza. I mean, it's sort of like retarded. He talks about we're going to annex it, but like, he's actually telling Israel you can go in and do it again. I mean, I think he's been a pretty strong supporter of Israel. So I don't have a problem with that. I think that moving people out of Gaza as refugees is a kind of a humane settlement. I appreciate that he's put it on the table. It's not going anywhere now. Maybe it goes somewhere down the line. So no, I'm not unhappy with the Gaza stuff. I think Doge. I think their focus. I've written about this is just sort of stupid. I don't think it's we'll see how disastrous it is. Like if we see real long-term damage, like it might be just like this damage to like sort of scientific research. Maybe it's just a thing where they did this, scalpel, they cut off all the stuff and maybe they bring it back. If there's long-term damage to like American innovation, if we see kind of evidence of that, I would say, yeah, that's a pretty disastrous outcome that I didn't foresee. But yeah,
So the
it's a mixed bag.
USAID, the illegality of Doge, the chopping off all the departments and firing everybody who disagrees with him. None of that
Yeah, it's
bothers you that
not what I
much.
would. It's
Okay.
not what I would. I think USAID actually. I mean, I think there's some programs that do a lot, and I think rightists hate it because they think it's like a haven of like transsexual militants and so forth.
This is
How
like
much of
one of our best soft power programs in the country. Had so much goodwill in other countries built up as a result of these programs, and it's just like completely ejected.
Yeah, I mean, I think America's soft power is probably more, just Hollywood and our economic growth and our success rather than like government USAID, like being able to take a lot of credit for that. The
Yeah, but our
USAID is not where
economic growth is going to be sacrificed now for tariffing everybody for whatever reason, and for isolating us as much economically as we can from as much as Trump can from the rest of the world. We still do cultural exportation, but I mean, I don't know if that's alone enough to carry us. Like,
Well, I mean, we'll see how bad the tariffs is and how how all in he goes on it. There's good stuff on sort of permitting and good stuff on energy and DEI, and there's going to be bad stuff on tariffs. But I think the fact Trump's just self-interest is the key here. I mean, the market responds. The market really is hurt by tariffs. I think there's he might inch away from them. So at least we potentially have that.
Did you see that Atlanta Fed forecast of the like 2.8% GDP retraction or contraction that they've predicted coming up? Negative 2.8 growth.
Yeah, I think it's bad. Hopefully he learns. Hopefully he learns. But we do have a crypto reserve now, so if the economy goes south, we do have the most
And that
the most
too.
valuable possible asset that cannot possibly ever go down.
Do all the crypto scams, does that bother you? The fact that the president of the United States is openly running one of the most scammy fucking crypto things that any crazy fucking person could be bribing him on, or what, they have 80% of the tokens held that.
It sucks. Look, I don't think corruption is as bad as a lot of people do. I think corruption is often like a way to get things done. There was a case out here in LA where there was a Chinese guy who wanted to build some like, multi-billion-dollar skyscraper and basically paid like, a million or two to some city councilmen, and they put the city councilman in jail for like 10 years. And I'm like, LA, we need to build stuff. Like, we have this major problem. So like a guy pays $1 million to city councilman to get a $1 billion skyscraper. That seems like a good deal. Something that if you let slide wouldn't necessarily hurt the country. A lot of the stuff is like this too, like Trump being like corrupt on Middle East, like the fact that he just wants to go to Gaza and like build hotels, like that's better than like a lot of the way the left sees the Middle Eastern conflict. I mean, you have to have stability and peace, and things have to work out in order for you to build hotels to have a fruitful financial relationship. So yeah, the corruption stuff is kind of bad, but it has some pluses
What
too.
is the okay? So if all of this stuff is so easily hand waved, what was the huge fear you had for Kamala? I'm so curious.
Well, this is kind of more unambiguously bad policy, right?
Like what?
It's high taxes. It's high taxes. It's pro labor unions. It's pro the environmentalist movement.
Well, so I
which
mean, like
think
one at a time. So high taxes. So we have an issue with our deficit right now. I don't know why Elon keeps saying this. There's only two things you need to balance the budget. What was it, like competency and caring? This is fucking retarded. The only thing that matters is how much you spend and how much you make. They keep cutting the taxes, so the government's not making enough money. They've already asked for a $4 trillion increase in taxes, or I'm sorry, in the debt ceiling. And I don't think that we're going to get any real savings in terms of how much we're spending. I don't even know if the deficit will decrease. So like, how can you keep unless like
it's all that where you of course know where the money's going. It's basically Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Sure.
And so Social Security and Medicare is down the line. Medicaid, we might get some cuts coming forward. So yeah, you could raise taxes or you could cut spending. I'm a conservative in that aspect. I think we should cut spending. Doge is not going to balance the budget. It's not going to save $1 trillion. This is just Musk BS. But yeah,
but we probably have to raise taxes and expand our tax base a bit if we want to bring our budget anywhere back in line, right?
Maybe. I mean, maybe. There's going to be a negotiation at some point where we're going to have to have some probably combination of revenue raising and spending cuts. I am with the Republicans because I want it to be more balanced by spending cuts. Okay, so there's that.
They're not cutting any spending while they're doing their tax cuts. We didn't get spending cuts when we had the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, right?
They're trying the budgetary negotiations. They are talking about cutting Medicaid. I mean, they are trying to do that.
Why couldn't we just? It feels like the easiest way to do it would be to expand taxation a little bit, or at least let the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expire, which would be fine. I don't think anybody making seven figures is going to be hurt by 3 or 4 points on their taxes going out. I don't even know if it's that significant.
Figures. I mean, those making 6 figures and 5 figures are also going to see our taxes go up, even though the majority goes to the highest earners because they pay the most in taxes. Still, it's significant. If your marginal tax rate, if you're making 500,000, would go up 10% or whatever it is.
I don't know if it would go up 10%, but even if even for 500,000, I think paying a few percentage points more, I think they'll be okay. I don't think they're going to be suffering in the United States. If we think that the budget deficit is a big deal, if we think the debt matters, then we have to bring it in line somehow. And the second way that you can address your deficit issue, of course, right, is by growing your economy. Because as the economy grows, your debt is a smaller percentage of GDP. You maintain the same percentage of GDP collected as taxes, and then you deal with your deficit. But like, we're doing tax cuts, right? Trump wants to extend the tax cuts or make them larger. I don't know but he's extending at least his tax cuts. We haven't found any significant spending cuts yet. I don't know what is going to come of this new continuing resolution if they're actually going to get a budget. And he is hurting the growth of the economy by tariffing the fuck out of everything. So everything just points to worse costs of living in the U.S. as prices go up on everything. Lower GDP. We're looking at a contraction. Why? We were growing. I don't know why we were contracting. And
No,
then
that's
we're
cyclical. I mean, it's just not. Yeah, I mean, it
it's well,
happens.
excuse me, 3% contraction. The economy is not cyclical.
Well,
Cyclical is like
let's do
we
it.
only grew one
Yeah.
or 2% this year. That's a bad economy. Is a 1 or 2% growth for a quarter, not a 3% contraction for a quarter. That's insane.
Yeah. So on the growth thing, I think I don't know if we're agreeing on this, but I think growth is kind of the key. If you get 1% more growth every year, that compounds. That you're a significantly wealthier country.
But what are we doing
And
to grow? Tariffs are going to, by definition, hurt the economy,
well, I
right?
mean, look, there is a positive benefit for corporate reducing corporate and individual taxes. I think that the permitting issue is a big issue. I don't know if you how much you looked into sort of Trump what he's doing against the Environmental Protection Act. But it's significant. The people who pay attention to energy policy say this is a really big deal because basically Trump is taking cleaver to this entire thing, which says you just have to, produce thousands of pages of paperwork if you're going to build anything in the country. So there is that. I mean, energy is just a huge part of it. I think there was a lot of restrictions on energy in the Biden administration. I think that's significant. That's significant.
That's
You
fine, but
also have
like you've found like the nicest band-aid for a few cuts and scrapes that I've had on my like leg, but I also have like life-threatening leukemia that's ravaging my entire body. Like, were there issues with the EPA with being too heavy on restrictions? Maybe. We were already producing more energy than we ever have under Biden. We're already a world leader in production
No,
of
no,
energy.
it's not just about energy. It's the National Environment Protection Act. Basically says anytime you want to build anything that has any federal component at all, you have to go through these like ridiculous red tape. You have to produce
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure some of that was maybe bullshit, and I'm sure reducing some of that is fine, but none of this
it's
is going to
huge.
compare to, but not anywhere near as huge as a 25% tariff on every fucking thing we imported to this country. Not even remote. Like the offset for that is going to be like 0.1%, maybe, right?
We'll see. I mean, we'll see. Like, I think NEP has a bigger an energy or a bigger deal than you might be thinking. But yeah, 25% tariffs would also be pretty
Catastrophic.
disastrous.
Not pretty disastrous, catastrophic.
I'm hoping that like Trump just being stupid, like again, like I'm just hoping Trump being stupid is like how we get out of this because like he sees he works out some deal where he feels like a big important man. He sees the economy goes down. He sees that's dangerous. He's going to be a rational actor at some point. That's the benefit.
Yeah.
I think the Democrats are probably less likely to like change on their crazy policies because they're about towing to the line of interest groups. So when you talk about the environmental lobby, if you're talking about the environmental lobby, the civil rights lobby, these kind of groups that want, labor unions, all these other things. Like it's not very easy for Democrats to go against that. Trump, the economy starts dipping, his poll numbers go down. He can switch at the drop of a hat, and the people like his secretary of the Treasury, people like Elon Musk, will love it because those people aren't necessarily big.
Yeah,
fans
but
of
when you
tariffs
look
anyway.
at him and how you were talking about interest groups, the SEC just like killed how many probes into different crypto investigations. We've got Trump
Look,
and Melania
these are
themselves doing
scammers.
crypto scams. We got
The crypto scamming idiots out of their money. I mean, it's not great, but it's like that's not gonna like destroy the country. It's just idiots losing their money. I mean,
no, but the
it is what
tariffs might. The tariffs are on the way for that, and the
that's what I
damaging.
was just that's what I was just saying. I'm hoping that he can adjust. And I think it's easier for him to adjust than Democrats with their pressure to their interest groups.
Yeah, but like, what was the worst outcome for Democrats giving into pressure from interest groups versus the worst outcome for Trump, which is like the destruction of the country economically? Like, we were
Well,
worried
I
that
mean,
there were going to be a little bit too much like DEI and government programs, or like, what was this huge catastrophe?
I think we end up basically poor like Europe. We get slightly lower growth. We get 2% lower growth a year. Trump is so far economic growth has not been so good this first quarter.
Not so
I
good,
acknowledge
as in catastrophically low, right? We haven't seen anything this bad since COVID,
well,
and
yeah,
then
the estimate of one quarter, right? But the long term damages. Look, I think Trump was more a tail end. Like if you told me like is something ridiculous is going to happen that's going to destroy the country, I would have said that's more likely under Trump than Kamala. But I think the median outcome for Kamala, median outcome for Democrat rule is California or New York, nice places to live. It's still the United States of America, but just stagnant. Like people are leaving these states. We're not
people might
nearly.
be moving out because it's so expensive, but these are like our economic powerhouses, right? The United States is not known internationally because of Alabama, Louisiana, and Georgia. Places like New
Look
York
at
and California are the drivers of so much of U.S.
the trajectory is wrong direction. So they're growing much slower than the red states. They're losing people. Texas and Florida are booming, and this is a direct comparison of there's these policy differences. It can't just be the weather because California has beautiful weather. Liberal policies just have not worked here, and I think Democrats are acknowledging this. There was some meeting, I forget what this was, but
Yeah, I
you
saw it. I
probably saw
retweeted
this on
it.
Twitter.
Yeah, that maybe there are
Yeah,
issues related to crime and
they're
whatnot.
acknowledging.
For
Yeah,
sure,
they're
but like when you
acknowledging
say
that.
like Texas is now having a booming economy or whatever, or Texas is growing, no offense to my wonderful conservative friends, Texas is not growing because more guys with F-150s and Chevy Silverados are ranching more cattle there. They're growing because people are moving out of California and are setting up new liberal havens in Texas, right? If you go to, I don't know if you spent time in Austin, but if you go to Austin, you walk down 6th Street, you feel like you're in fucking San Francisco almost. Like these are not super ultra conservative redneck bastions of
Well,
conservatism. They're just like making new
that's
liberal
true.
cities.
Maybe the ideal is a red state government and a blue. Look, I think smart people just sort of naturally, uh, sort of become towards the left. I don't deny that within Texas, like the most economically productive members of the pub, although a lot of them are in the energy industry too. Energy is a big part of this too. So a lot of Texas economic growth, just like they could drill for oil and do this stuff, while California really can't because of the environmental regulations. But no, you're right that like elite human capital is liberal. That's unquestionably true. It doesn't, but like if those look, if those people in Austin who have all the fancy restaurants were the legislature of that state, I don't think it would grow as quickly, and probably would have never attracted them in the first place. So there is this kind of paradox.
I guess the thing that bothers me the most is that like so I don't know how much you're familiar with my economic stuff or whatever, but like I'm a very 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 huge capitalist. I believe that markets are real. I think market forces need to be respected. I'm very big on policy that is oriented around market forces. And I think it used to be that conservatives had, because back in the neocon days, they at least defended our big businesses, they defended capitalism, all that. But I guess my biggest fear now is that you kind of have the left on whatever economic policy they have. I don't even know anymore because we don't talk about policy in the US anymore. But MAGA is just so out there. Like if you were to tell me like what coherently is Trump's economic policy, like is it even by the time you finish that sentence, are you even confident it hasn't changed by the time you explain it? Like, I just don't see like a good tension there. I just see like if we are going to assume progressives or the left are crazy when it comes to economics, MAGA is just as crazy, it feels, and that they're not based in any kind of capitalism, realistic market forces world anymore. It's just deregulate, but then also tariff the fuck out of everything and then see what happens, I guess.
MAGA is MAGA. There is a kind of gap between MAGA. I've been tempted to at some point say that I'm like a Democrat at the national level and like a Republican at the state and local level, because these are different things. I think that the National Republican Party is kind of just become retarded. I think it started with Fox News, these kind of infotainment. I think that like Elon Musk has obviously made this worse, and kind of right wing Twitter is just a disaster. But then, you look at the performance of red states, and yeah, sometimes they're hicks and they want to ban all abortion and so forth. At the same time, like their policies are a lot more sensible. Like smart left wing people like Ezra Klein and so forth will acknowledge that they're like better on housing policy. So there is like good sense there. So there is, that you can look. I mean, there's people who track economic freedom. There's these organizations that like try to rate them, how much how the licensing regime and the occupational licensing regime and housing and the labor market and all of that. And they basically find that the conservative states are doing better. Sometimes a state run by Democrats will do okay. Jared Polis in Colorado has been doing some good things, and Colorado has been booming as a result. So yeah, there's I'm a pro market guy too. Look, if Democrats became overall pro market and were otherwise did not have the flaws of MAGA and loved our rules based international order, I'd love the Democrats. I'd be happy to jump on that train.
Okay. Well, any other topics?
It's up to you, man.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate the conversation, even though I'm sure my audience can be super mad at this conversation. I do appreciate the chat. I like watching you rile everybody on Twitter, me included. What's the main thing you link is your Substack?
Yeah, Substack is where when people follow me on Twitter but they don't read the Substack, I sort of get disappointed. It's like 60-70% free, but that's where like that's where the more serious thoughts go. But follow me on Twitter, of course, too. And yeah, I look forward to seeing the reaction to this.
Do you mind me asking, how do you pronounce your last name?
Hanania.
Do you mind me asking where it comes from? Where is that last name from?
That's what I told you. It's my dad's a Palestinian Christian. If you look back, if you Google it, you will see it seems originally Hebrew. There is a Rabbi Hanania who fought the Romans like 2,000 years ago.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, a Jewish name that got kind of adapted by the Palestinian Christians,
Huh.
or
Crazy.
actually Palestinian Christians.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I'll chat with you later. Or if anything ever comes up, feel free to shoot me a message as well. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Been a pleasure, Steve. Thanks.
Have a good one. Bye. Damn. Trump stated there's nothing Canada and Mexico can do, and the tariffs will go into effect tomorrow. Fuck, you know what? I feel like I'm a loser on every front now, because I used to make fun of conservatives saying, hey, you know, you guys are just voting for big tax cuts for people like me, so actually you guys are losing out in the end. But if the economy goes to shit and all my stocks fall, I'm losing more than any of these broke fucking losers are. No! Wait, why is my camera so small? Oh. The fuck is this? Whoa. Thoughts on Bitcoin today? Oh no. What happened? God damn, how much money is being made and lost here in these daily swings. Holy fuck. Check Intel is down crying. Oh, we need, are they called chirons? Wait, or chirons? What are they called? What's the name of the things that go across the bottom of the screen? Chiron. We need some of these for stocks when we're doing our news segment. That'd be based. That's why me and my FA switched my portfolio to be based off lobbyist spending instead of standard market performance. What? What does FA mean? Oh, financial advisor. Trudeau's out no matter what, right? He's not managing to hang on for another, I don't know how you guys do elections up there, but there's going to be a different person soon, right? Oh shit, let me finish the last 3 minutes of this. And I think Anna wants to hop on.
And then there's like a million drama channels that jump onto it, and it's like, okay, this is just, you know, it went from being the opinion of actual Trash Days fans to very quickly becoming the opinion of like certain groups who would just kind of rally around it. So yeah, it was unfortunate. And you know, people will come to chat, they comment and stuff, and they're like, hey, when are you know, how fucking dare you? Are you going to address this? Yeah. It's like, look, at the end of the day, if I address it, these a lot of these groups of people are not going to be happy with anything or any kind of response, right? Because if you say, I'll delete it, a lot of fans who didn't give a fuck will be annoyed. If you say, all right, we won't delete it, then they'll get annoyed no matter what. And then maybe it's deleting's not enough for some people, you know? So if you start trying to chase apologies, you end up just pleasing no one and just looking like a coward. You know, which is why when, you know, Hassan saw it and he felt bad and he, you know, he was like, hey, you gonna make a statement or anything? I was like, no, I'm not gonna make a fucking statement. Who gives a fuck? Like, you're not gonna please anyone by making a statement. People just want to be annoyed because they want to be annoyed right now. You didn't watch and moved on? Look, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think the internet would be so much better if we had a bit more respect. But hey, look, that's how it goes. And you will engage in the cultural. I'm doing everything in my fucking power not to, because I don't give a fuck. Because I feel like half the time, it's not even about like politics or anything like that. It's just about being right or wrong, or being on the side. It's just pure tribalism, man. And I just don't want to engage with it. It's just bad for your brain. It just doesn't help. I just feel worse whenever I read any of this shit, or when I like whenever there's like absolutely demonstrably false things being said. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is going on? I can't engage with this anymore. Like,
how long will Hassan's ban be? If I had to guess, 7 days. That would be the biggest one I think he's ever gotten, though. But it might actually just be 1 or 3 days. Who knows?
Yeah. So, look, and that's why, again, I want to reiterate that we told Hassan, because, you know, we saw him reacting to it and being like, hey, get in there and stop, you know, he was trying to brigade against people who were brigading it, who they were. There were trash fans who didn't like it, and there was people brigading. I told Hassan, I was like, don't do this. I think it's petty, makes you look bad. I think it's pathetic, so don't do this. Don't tell people to get in there and fucking brigade it. I think it doesn't help anyone. So yeah, that's that. That's pretty much all there is to it. I think it's not gonna be a lot. I apologize to people who are not gonna be satisfied with me talking about it in this way. This is the best you're gonna get. I've genuinely nothing else to add. I wish it was more eloquent and I wish I had a script, but I think also these are the kind of situations where I think it's just better to be honest and just talk about it candidly.
Yeah, Hassan got banned for apparently threatening or talking about killing Rick Scott, I guess. I didn't cover this initially on stream because fuck Republicans. I don't give a fuck what Hassan says about them, so.
And also, yeah, that's it. No, I didn't have anything else.
Damn. Rip. These guys had Hassan on to discuss anime or whatever bullshit, and apparently they got a lot of flack for it, and they got mad at everybody, including Hassan, for brigading the comment section and everything, so, and they lost like 4,000 or 5,000 subs from it. Rip. Wait, was this the guy for sure that bought? They know this or they tracked this down? Chinese crypto mogul Justin Sun bought $75 million of the Trump coin, then had his pending civil fraud case halted by the SEC. There was one huge player that made a lot of money on Trump coin. I assumed it was just an insider like a Trump guy. But was it this guy? Does he have any official ties to the Trump camp? Asked a federal judge to put the agency's case on hold, citing the interests of both sides and the public's interest. God damn. I wonder if any of these people that got scammed feel any type of way about Trump and all of his crypto stuff. Jesus. Like, if you were one of the people that lost out, do you think any of them care? I doubt they follow any of this news. Well, no, but they bought in and then their money went down. So, I mean... I'm going to use the restroom that we're chatting with Anna. Hold on one sec.